Hello, thanks for joining us today for the Visibility That Shippers Need webinar hosted by Vision API and Kyle Henderson. My name is Charlie DeHoney. I'll be the moderator today. I'm the CEO of Freight Mango, which is a digital freight marketplace focused on democratizing global trade by linking all of the services that shippers need in addition to transportation, including trade finance, insurance, customs clearance, and of course, visibility. So I'm excited to be leading the conversation today with some industry experts and some of the brightest entrepreneurs in the space. So we'll go around quickly, get some introductions, and then we'll jump right into the visibility that shippers actually need today. Fair enough. So first we'll start with Kyle Henderson, the CEO of Vision.
Thanks, Charlie. And thank you to all of our guests for today's webinar. Quick plug on Vision. We are an API for getting easy, high quality access to ocean visibility data. We've been in business for a few years, worked with some of the largest freight forwarders, software companies, BCOs in the industry. And again, thank you for the panel for attending and looking forward to Charlie's questions.
Thanks. Then let's go with Rajesh Kumar from Geodis.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Rajesh Kumar. I'm a director with Geodis, and my role is I'm the product leader for Geodis Visibility Platform. And I've been with Geodis for close to 18 months now. And my role has been primarily to roll out Visibility Platform to all our customers. And it has been a very challenging, interesting journey in learning about what customers want and how we are giving their needs in Visibility Platform. So happy to be part of this panel today.
Excellent. We're happy to have you, Rajesh. Thank you for being here. Now the man of the hour, Brian Glick with Chain.io. So congratulations, Brian, on the recently announced Series A raise.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Brian. I'm the founder CEO here at Chain.io, and we are a platform focused on all things integration. So visibility being a very large portion of that, but we help large shippers and freight forwarders connect their internal systems, connect to each other, bridge the gap between, say, 1970s mainframes and 2021 APIs and all the wonderful things that exist in between.
Well, you guys are doing God's work for connecting those systems. So thank you for everything you're doing. Next is Thomas Speaker with Shipio.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. Good morning, everybody. My name is Thomas, and I'm running the operations for Shipio in Central and Eastern Europe. And Shipio is the leading visibility provider in Europe, founded in 2014, and we've seen some significant growth with more and more customers going abroad into the Americas, but also into the APAC region. So very happy to be here. Looking forward to your questions, Charlie.
Yeah, I can't wait to jump into it, Thomas. Huge fan of Shipio and what you guys have been able to accomplish across the pond. And Europe has really become one of the leading battlegrounds in the global race for visibility. So it's going to be super exciting to get your perspective on that as well. So thanks for being here. And then last but not least is Edson Greenwood from Anvil.
Thanks, Charlie. Appreciate it. And likewise, it's great to be here with everybody. I run our customer success and operations here at Anvil, and Anvil's focus typically a little bit more upstream than a lot of everybody else on the panel. We bring a lot of visibility and collaboration to the production part of the supply chain. But as you know, that connects very rapidly into the shipping space. And so, I think, all this, as Brian touched on, is just getting more and more connected. And, so I think it'll be a great conversation, and appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah, I think this is the type of conversation that will keep the, sort of global data-driven logistics nerds of the world at the edge of their seats. So really excited to jump right into this with you guys. So just for some context for, the course of the conversation, visibility has become a catch-all phrase, and it's overstated in a number of different ways. And while shippers continue to ask for visibility, oftentimes the shippers have their own expectations of what visibility actually entails. And then we've got all of the various service providers, from the sort of bleeding edge, venture-backed service providers that are coming into the market over the last 5 to a couple of years, and then going back to the legacy systems that Brian and his team spend their time operating inside of on a regular basis. And so having this varying spectrum of service providers and technological capabilities, it's really become difficult to sort of come up with a unilateral definition of what does visibility mean. what is the shipper's expectation of visibility in this age of disrupted supply chains that we found ourselves in over the last 24 months, from a pandemic to social unrest, to port congestion, and all the way to the Ever Given clogging the Suez recently. We've seen supply chain disruptions of massive proportion. And with all of these varying expectations and complex situations going on, oftentimes vendors are out there screaming from the rooftops that they can provide visibility, and shippers so desperately want it that there's this misexpectation that leads to unproductive relationships. And ultimately the end customer is the one that ends up dissatisfied. So, for the purpose of this discussion, we're going to refer to the shippers as the suppliers, the folks that have the goods, or the BCOs and the brands, right? And so with their expectation being the only one that really matters at the end of the day, it's important that we kind of continuously go back to their pain points, right? So I think the best place to start off, talking to industry leaders like you guys who are spending all of your time out in the field and on the phone speaking with the customers, is let's jump into the biggest pain points you're hearing today. Not what we were hearing, at the conferences pre-COVID, but what are we looking for today from a shipper's perspective, and how will they know when visibility has been solved? So, couple that with the increase in the demand for visibility that we've seen during the COVID pandemic, and let's jump right into the current wants and needs of what folks are asking for. Does anybody want to kick us off?
Do you want me to? Should I drop the grenade in the middle of the conversation right out of the gate?
I hope so. Let's go.
So I would say that ultimately shippers don't want visibility. They want their product to be where it needs to be so they can meet their available to promise date at a reasonable landed cost, right? That ultimately visibility is an enabling technology to making good decisions. And unfortunately, without it, you can't make the business decisions. You can't do the things that people actually care about, right? So we are, as an industry, at a point of still building foundational building blocks for other business processes. But if you don't look at visibility first in context of the fact that all it is getting you the information to then do the thing that you actually need to do, then it becomes sort of visibility for its own sake, which doesn't get you anywhere. And I think that's what a lot of shippers are suddenly having to deal with, is the fact that they have real supply chain resiliency problems, whether it's social compliance issues in China, whether it's the Ever Given, whether it's the pandemic. And so they've suddenly realized, I need my visibility to go fast, my evolution of visibility to go fast, because ultimately I have a real problem over here that I have to solve, which is I need to put stuff on shelves for people to buy. So I think that big context matters a lot.
So I think a couple of things from there is one, can we all agree on that the most important thing to the shipper is when you pick up, when do you deliver, how often or how quickly can you tell me when something changes? Do we all agree on that? And then if so, then if they don't want visibility, let's unpack exactly what they want, because everybody's asking for visibility. And some of the companies on this call have raised a bunch of money against this idea that we're selling visibility. And that's what we're getting in front of customers and on a regular basis. So if not visibility, what exactly is it, Thomas?
Yeah, I think, Brian, and thanks for the intro. I think it was a very good way to kick the discussion off. I need to say that I'm probably 90% with you on everything you said. But I still believe that around visibility, especially in the pandemic situation that we are in today, there are also new opportunities and new business models. If we look at e-commerce, let's take our customers that we see is they use visibility, of course, to know when are the goods arriving, when are they in stock, when can they put it on the website, when can the customer go and shop and just be assured that within the next 12 or 24 hours he's going to be delivered. However, what we're also seeing is by delivering not basic, but what I would probably call advanced visibility with very precise predictions when the goods are actually going to arrive, especially in e-commerce, sometimes we see that these retailers switch their business models, meaning that they're never going to show anything out of stock on the website, because they know that if you put an out of stock item there, they will probably switch to another website and shop somewhere else. So what we do at Shipio is then we would provide an ETA and say, you have this product probably not in stock today, but you have it in stock within 4 hours, or probably you have it in stock within 8 hours, or probably only in 2 days. But let's tell the customer, I'll deliver it in 3 days and not in 24 hours, but I'll give you an extra voucher for something else. So I think this visibility topic, yes, it is linked to operational malfunctioning of processes. However, I still believe that also built on advanced visibility, there are more and more new business models to come, probably not only in e-commerce, but probably also in other sectors.
So I think we're 100% aligned. Yes.
I think we're starting to really get to the core of this now. Rajesh, how does that stack up against some of your guys' internal initiatives at Geodis?
Yeah, so what we are seeing is, I would definitely align with what Thomas and Brian have hinted here, right? So customers, compared to 1 year back and what we are seeing now, right? So they're asking more and more, how can you show us what's happening to in-transit inventory, right? Where is my product located, right? And if there is going to be delays, right? Maybe the container did not get onto a ship, or the vessel is stuck due to congestion. How are you going to alert us with the exceptions, right? So they want to get the information in front of their team members who can make decisions based on what's happening, right? They need to communicate back to their customers. They have commitments to make. I think that's where the exception-based alerts, it becomes a very critical aspect for us when we work with our customers.
Charlie, I think you might be on mute.
All right, that's strike one, you guys. So Edson, I'd like to understand and hear a little bit more about what your customers are asking for on the visibility from the production side, and how this is ultimately playing into keeping that customer promise that we're all agreeing is the most important.
Yeah. First, I would definitely agree with everything that's been said so far. Brian, great point on really like what is the end goal of all this, and Thomas, really appreciate kind of the expansion of this around like what it's doing to business strategy, right? And I do think that the e-commerce field right now is totally different than what it was when like Warby Parker was launching 10 years ago, right? And it's competitive, right? And so these brands are under a lot of pressure to get products ready to ship, and so. I do think that the idea of visibility is very appealing, but we can't lose sight of like why it's important, right? And the other thing that I would add to this is, at least from what we're seeing, is like how does that visibility connect into all the other data and supply chain, right? There's so much other information getting pushed to people, and if you're not getting the visibility at the right time early enough in the process, then you can't make the proactive decision in order to like impact when these goods actually get on the shelves or to your customer. And so I think the other thing that we seem to be getting requests for is like, how does it all tie together, right? And like, how do you pick up trends when what's going on in my supply chain faster than I can do it with my spreadsheet or my whatever my older version of how people used to use or operate in supply chain, right? And so those would be the two things I would add, and maybe one other thing is flexibility. I think we see a lot of people with a lot of different needs, and it's really hard for any system to say like I found the like holy grail of supply chain on like how I want everyone to operate. And so how do you take all this and put it together into one visibility platform that allows it to be flexible and surface things in the quickest possible way?
Yeah, so I think that goes back to the fact that this ubiquitous term for visibility is ultimately, it's like it comes down to the connective tissue inside of these supply chains, and how can we surface that data, right? So Kyle, how does some of these trends that we're talking about today play into some of the decisions you guys are making and what you're hearing from customers?
So when we speak to customers and other partners and parties in the space, we take Brian's grenade and we might dress it up slightly different. we talk about it, the quest for consistency, but the playing field keeps changing. There are more parties, items need to move faster, your networks need to rearrange more quickly. As Edson was saying, flexibility is key. And this is also what's driven that digitization transformation across the industry, because in the quest for consistency, you're finding you need to measure more, you need to be plugged into more data sources, you need to be able to access that information more readily. The information needs to be ready to be used in some way. And this improved visibility is really just another way of saying, can I understand what's happening on the ground faster, better, more impactfully? And when we're out in the market and we're interacting with people, we're really kind of on the ground, similar to Brian, like dealing with those pain points of the connectivity, just so you can get the basic access to data, because you want to be able to leverage data in some way. And that's the trend I think we're really seeing, is the leaders in this space, the leader BCOs, the leader shippers, they're all investing in accelerating their ability to leverage data, because it's all about a quest for consistency. There are consistent elements in the network. The challenge now is how quickly can you find them and leverage them to the benefit of your business?
Got it. So I think surfacing the data, the consumption of the data, also, Edson brought up, like, people are getting flooded with data. There's so much information out there. So I think maybe it'd be helpful to discuss a little bit more about, what are the different types of visibility solutions out there? And then maybe we can kind of jump into some of the pros and cons. So, maybe Kyle, let's start back with you, and then we'll go to Brian, and we'll start with just sort of some of the connectors in the space that are sort of addressing these disparate systems, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. So many of us know that the space has been living on EDI being AS2, SFTP for quite a while, and these connectors in this space, they're having to change the mindset also of how they work. Between companies and in terms of technologies as well. Everyone needs to be moving up to the cloud in some way, because the cloud is what's going to enable you to have better connections set up more quickly, and also the approach of shifting more towards APIs versus EDI, because APIs by their nature need to actually meet a documented standard of some sort and can only be used inside that standard, where we know that EDI has been beaten horribly over the decades and has been shoehorned into however anyone wants to try and use it in some way. Just the nature of effectively giving EDI to the crowd and seeing where they run with it, and they made it work for how they needed it to work. But in terms of what we're seeing in space, especially in ocean where we focus, we see carriers finally starting to get on board with spinning up their own APIs, whether that's on the track and trace side, maybe that's a bit more on the quoting or booking side, hopefully in the near future as well. But there's this general transition to we have to be working in an API mindset on the cloud, so that we have that ability to quickly rearrange our connectors, connect to new parties, live in a more consistent standard data, I say standard from a data perspective, environment, so that we can actually build those tools for our customers or for our company and be able to really push forward on how we can intelligently understand what's happening and build insights, but more importantly, like actually create software that makes things actionable. So EDI, I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon, but you're going to be seeing the next generation of software always be prioritizing building on APIs before they go to EDI. EDI is only going to be a necessary evil.
Yeah, I agree with that. Brian, how does that factor into some of the strategies that you're seeing post-pandemic from your enterprise customers?
So I think that what we're seeing is maybe a stratification of different types of visibility, right? And there's the, we start at sort of the bottom, which is IoT and Internet of Things and physical visibility. Where is this physical asset? It's not as modern as a lot of what people think of IoT, but the ultimate IoT often is the AIS state of where's the ship, right? Like physically, where is the ship on the planet? do I have a container tracking device? Do I know where the container is? Do I know where a carton is as it's being scanned in and out of a warehouse? There's sort of that physical, very raw data. And then there's this next level of visibility, which is, a lot of where I guess vision plays, which is, where is this data in the context of a larger movement, a voyage, or a movement through a port, or that type of information. And then there's this sort of next level, third level of business data, which is not so much where is this physical thing anymore, but where's my purchase order, or where is my SKU, or to what Edson was saying, when can I, or I think it was actually Thomas, sorry, when can I promise the SKU to a customer so that I can put that on my e-commerce website, right? And that stacking of that cake, I think that shippers are getting smarter, and 3PLs and 4PLs especially are getting smarter about being able to talk more specifically around these different types of solutions, and that I don't think it's a question of necessarily that one's better than the other, as they all stack to build up, and we're getting much more sophisticated in being able to have those conversations as opposed to just calling it all the same thing. So.
Yeah, Edson, I'd like to understand how that stratification, because Brian, I think the analogy of stacking a cake is just spot on, right? And just like the segmentation that we just touched on right there, I think was fantastic. And I'm curious, Edson, as that supply chain relationship management level, in your business, how is that stratification sort of playing into your customer strategies and what you're talking to your customers about from a relationship management and data perspective?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's kind of, we spend a lot of time on this, and the core of where we start the journey with the customer is with the purchase order. And, the goal is to bring that layer of visibility to the purchase order. But we can't do that by just looking at the purchase order, right? You have to think about all the other things that happen in someone's supply chain, and where do the problems lie, right? And so it gets more and more connected. And I think we see people wanting to follow that purchase order from, when the time it gets submitted to the supplier. And then, it's not good enough just to know when it leaves the manufacturing site, right? Like what happens to it after that. And so, us, I think that we can help surface some of the next steps through visibility, but there's so much other stuff that has to play into that. And if I tell a customer that their order is delayed at a supplier, that's okay. That's helpful, right? But what if I told them, because we've seen all this data that's starting to flow from manufacturing sites through all these IoT, it's going in that way where there's more and more data, right? But what if I told them, hey, we think there's going to be a delay in 3 days with your manufacturer? Like, would that be more helpful, right? And so that's the sort of stuff that we're starting to push towards, is like, can we get smarter and smarter using this data to help our systems talk to each other and help the customer make better decisions earlier?
Yeah, my comment to that is we better, because all of our children expect things to work that way, right? Exactly. If we can't tell them that the ship's not going to sail, or we can't tell them that truck is going to break down, imagine the questions you get from the backseat on those things. So we've got to get this right before they come into the workforce, because they just won't tolerate it, right? So Thomas, one of the things I thought would be interesting is, especially in the European market, there's a lot of claims about data visibility quality and who's the best, and clearly Shipio is making a tremendous amount of progress on the market share and really building out a beachhead in Europe. I'm kind of curious about some of these varying types of visibility platforms, and maybe some of the overpromising that you're hearing out in the market, and how you guys are approaching and attacking that segmentation, and where you're living right now.
Yeah, that's a lot of questions, and probably we need to extend the webinar for another 2 hours to go in detail. But Charlie, I think it's spot on, your question. I think what we're seeing, and that's so interesting in this panel, we talked about different connections, quality of connections. We talked about data and how to leverage this data to predict something which might happen, and then surface this information in front of the customer, and not being on the truck level, container level, but bring it down to the SKU, to the material number that you're using in the automotive industry or something else. I think that's really the question that we all need to ask ourselves. And bringing the topic back to Europe, yes, I fully agree with you. there was and there still is a lot of over-promising in the market, and I think we all need to go back and have a look at what actually enables us, being a visibility platform, to make these predictions 2 days, 3 days, probably a week in advance, and all goes back to data quality. We mentioned connections, EDI, API. In Europe, we have 600,000 different trucking companies. They are using, I don't know, 750 different telematics. There are 500 different TMS. We spoke about IoT. So the overpromise very often comes from a lack of deep quality integration into this data world, because only having the right data, the right quality of data, the right level of data, so that I receive the same data on a regular basis, this will allow us, Shipio, to make these predictions, and then we factor in over 200 different parameters to predict an ETA, which are based on historical data, which are based on weather, which are based on other things. But it goes back to this quality of data. And I think, as you rightly said, Charlie, we spend a lot of time, a lot of money on building these connections, and then since we are also in Europe, we tend to over-regulate certain things, as we all know. Then we are in this topic of data privacy. We still have truck drivers sitting on the truck, so we have this very strong regulations on data, which is coming out of the truck, because it's a driver. There's a driver sitting in there, and I think the real focus for us, or at least the success factors for Shipio, was really around this quality approach, making sure that you get the first things right, that making sure that you have the right data set in your application. Then you can enable machine learning, artificial intelligence, etc. But that's only the second step. And I think the over-promising comes very often from the lack of the first level, which really consists in building the right connections, making sure that the data you have has the right quality, and that you are allowed to use it in the way that you sell it to your customer, and make sure that you don't put your customer into a situation where he would be fined by the European Union for misuse or something like this. I think that's really the key topic that we need to everybody who's entering the visibility space, especially in Europe, but we also see some tendencies like this in the other regions. But I think that's where we need to focus on.
Yeah, thanks for that context. I've been sort of excited to get your perspective on that. So, Rajesh, wanted to save you for last. With your role at Geodis, you've got a lot of insight and visibility into the asks of your global customers. So, with so much reach into their supply chain, how are you leveraging some of these technologies to surface the information that they're actually looking for?
Yeah, so I think definitely these global customers, right? So if you see how they operate, they leverage different modes of transportation to be able to bring the commodity into the market, right? Maybe I'm operating in US, but one product line is coming from LATAM, other from Europe, other from APAC. I may be using different providers to be able to get the product here. And now these visibility platforms, if you have to integrate with just one of those providers, it's going to create blind spot in the supply chain for customers, right? It's not going to create a holistic view for them and what's happening at a global level within their organization for the inventory. I think that's where what we are trying to do is trying to ensure, okay, if you want visibility, we would be allowing the customers to integrate different providers together so that we get all the data together, right? The more data we have, that's where we can go towards creating more predictive analytics, able to give end-to-end visibility in the supply chain for our customers. I think that's where these visibility platforms are maturing, right? And the way we saw how the industry is going the last 3-4 years, right? We start with a certain geography, start with a certain mode of transportation, and slowly folks are expanding into different geographies, making it more global. I think that's a natural progression that we are seeing how this visibility industry is also evolving with the shippers asks, actually.
Okay. So
Charlie, can I add something there?
Please do, Brian.
So when I used to sell freight and customs to shippers, oftentimes we go in, we talk about visibility, we talk about all the great tech that we had, and all of these things, and this was 10, 15 years ago, the same conversations. And what would happen is we'd make the pitch to the shipper, and the person responsible for the actual operation supply chain would love us. And then it would go to a separate procurement department who would say, no, you're actually $3 a container more expensive. We're not going to do that, right? Forget it. We're going to spend $3 less. And so that created a lot of bad behaviors. And I think probably the thing that will be the most different coming out of this pandemic is that decision factor at the shipper, the voting with the wallet, is going to change, right? And the ability for the shipper to push on, whether it's the freight forwarder or the carrier or the trucker, whoever it is, to say, no, I am going to spend the extra $3 a container to get visibility, and that it is table stakes, and that if you can't do that, you can't be my provider in my supply chain because this is that critical, is fundamentally that, it always starts with the shipper's wallet. And that's, I think, fundamentally a change that isn't going anywhere.
So I think that's a perfect, Thomas, I want to start with you over there, because I think that's the perfect segue to our next topic, which is how and where in the world are we finding budget dollars for supply chain technology and visibility right now?
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. And Brian, I'm completely with you here. I think we had this discussion on return on investment, and is it worth $3, yes or no, and what's the potential impact? So I need to go back into my ROI calculation, et cetera, et cetera. I'm totally with you, Brian. I think this is probably one of the major change that we're seeing within the shipping community, is that this question of $3 is no longer asked. You still need to build a very strong business case. You need to show that you are delivering added value, that you bring something on top. It's not just about tell me where your container is. I'm completely with you. But I guess the $3 are put into some kind of equation where you want to say, what happens if I don't put the $3? And what happened to me the last 12 months because I didn't put the $3 18 months ago? And I think the whole discussion now is still, you need to have a business case. Nobody is going to buy a full-blown visibility platform for just for the sake of buying it. But the arguments have changed. And I'm totally with you. I think probably 99% of our customers experienced this pandemic in a very bad and let's say way where they were exposed to risk, where they saw revenue dropping, where they had problems in provisioning, where stocks went down, et cetera, et cetera. So now this business case, which we have described 2 years ago on a more theoretical way, somehow became true. And everything that we said 2 years ago now is linked to real life experience. And I think that's what you wanted to say, Brian. This is, I guess, a really changing factor. And I was going back to this analysis from Gartner, who said, I think 6 months or 8 months ago, we don't know yet what the impact is. I think right now we know what the impact is. And I'm with you, Brian. The $3 still need to be set off against a business case, but the $3 are definitely in the wallet now of the shipper. Yeah.
Kyle, are you seeing the same thing in terms of selling a bundled ocean API, to folks that, maybe weren't in the space a few years ago, or maybe didn't have the same level of budget or risk tolerance on that?
Oh, 100%. And it's one of these situations where we have this idiom, the chickens have come home to roost, which means like earlier behaviors have led to current bad situations. So we 100% see this because, especially in ocean, the traditional way of getting visibility in ocean was hire a few more people, because with 4 weeks of transit time on average, you could put a person on it and they can, babysit, dozens or hundreds of containers potentially. But what we've seen is, especially in the midst of the pandemic, and especially today, even stronger, is that companies are really willing to invest more to make sure that they are having full visibility over all of their containerized shipments. And from a data perspective, consistent data, they're willing to pay for it. They understand the power of, even just putting it into like a basic kind of Power BI type of situation, just getting into any analytics platform so you could better understand performance of partners, so you can better understand where are your inconsistencies as they shop around and seek where is that more consistent element. It only can be solved with data. And what's I think the simple way of putting it is, what was an operational Band-Aid has now become a strategic investment for many of these companies. And it's only because the chickens have come home to roost.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that analogy there. Edson, when I became aware of Anvil and I realized that somebody was finally building like supply chain relationship management software, it, sort of struck me as obvious, that's something that should have been there for a long time. And I think of all the folks that have tried to bastardize other CRMs to make it work for, our little slice of the universe. So talk to me maybe about some of the triggers that have led us to this place where companies are now investing in that sort of, backbone element of where they can house all of their most important, valuable data and bring it together.
Yeah, it's funny you said that, Charlie. We get that comment quite often that people didn't even realize they had a problem until they see all their supply chain information in one centralized spot. And it's different than a ERP, right? Because the ERP is solving that problem at like the company level. This is built specifically for the supply chain team, right? But it needs to tie into an ERP. Sure. Thinking through, actually, I've actually been really interested in this question and just seeing like what's I think unclear is like what is going to be the expectation of the customer in a few years down the road, right? And I thought Thomas and Brian brought up some really interesting points around like table stakes that exist right now. But what does that look like in 3 years, right? And I think that's one thing that we're spending a lot of time thinking about right now and trying to understand at that like supplier relationship level is like, what are the like? I don't know that a visibility like Rajesh. Like, do you foresee the bigger need to provide a visibility tool or the information to connect into a visibility tool for your customers like 4 years down the road from now? And I guess what I'm trying to gauge this group on is like it seems like connectivity is extremely important. It seems like there are more and more tools on the market to help people get this visibility that everyone's looking for. But if I think about this 4 years down the road, I don't think people want to switch from tool to tool to tool to tool to see like all these different visibility platforms. So the table stakes almost seem to shift to like being able to provide timely information as fast, like as accurate as possible to whatever system the customer is using, right? And I don't know, that was just something that jumped out to me from the, I guess, Anvil perspective, hearing everyone's feedback around this topic. So yeah, I guess I'm
Rajesh, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So again, I think there are two sides to the coin here, actually, right? So the reason why the customers do see a big need for visibility platform is everybody operates on different platforms. Like we started with the conversation of the legacy green screens, right? Many of them still use it because that's still reliable and supports them, and all the way to the brand new APIs and all the new technologies available, actually, right? So there is a variable complexity here, right? If you want to go and connect back into those legacy systems, it's going to be counterproductive to get the data over there, actually, right? And how to, give the same level of security and how to get access to folks, right? And that's where I see there is a need for both. When we have modern ERPs that we are seeing that's coming in the market, they naturally have that visibility component attached to it, actually, right? But still, these legacy platforms, they are still going to stay around, right? They are rich in capabilities. They support huge volumes globally. I think that's where visibility platforms really tie all this data together and give a richer experience to the users in the supply chain.
Brian, you have 5 million reasons to tell us what's going to be happening in the next 3 to 5 years.
Well, so I think when I think back to, so I actually worked for a software company 20 years ago that was acquired by a company that was acquired by Geodis that did visibility for large enterprises, global supply chains from PO all the way through customs and inbound supply chain. And it would take us years to onboard a single customer, right? But it was a very, very similar to what Anvil does or what, Infor Nexus was our big competitor back then, and all of these things. And what's evolved, I think, in the last, over those 2 decades is applying the concept of omnichannel to visibility when you're a 3PL or a 4PL, which is to say, okay, if I need to move one shipment with you a year, I just want to be able to log in your website, right? And I want a very Flexport-like experience. If I'm moving several 100,000 containers, I need a really deep integration to my ERP. And there are definitely companies in the middle that say, I need a comprehensive visibility tool with reporting, exception management, but my company is not going to buy that because we're right at that tweener. We're in between those two.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that omni-channel approach of saying that, whether you're relying on your 3PL, whether you're building it yourself, whether you're buying, an over-the-top tool, or you're just okay on the spreadsheet because you're small and you just need to be able to log into your provider's website. They're all valid. There's just lots of different kinds of shippers out there. And I think over the next 3 years, what the service provider market is going to be looking at is omni-channel across everything, right? Omni-channel for booking, omni-channel for visibility, and I might want to book via phone, but still look up my visibility online or in my ERP, and it shouldn't matter that I have to have one engagement model with a service provider. So,
yeah, I think that's a valid point. I mean, we are seeing these new use cases enter the market. I'd be curious to maybe just see if there's any other ideas out there. Certainly, omni-channel sellers of goods, that's driving a lot of this. We've already talked about sort of the move back to real-time manufacturing or replenishment, and sort of how those cycle times are just getting shorter and shorter. And in my view, when I start to think about the future, products kind of like going and flowing through warehouses at the ports just doesn't seem like that's going to happen, right? I mean, it's like that container that it comes across on is going to get interlined onto some rail car, and like that container is the warehouse, at that point. And that's what's being tracked, because the arrival of those units and the disbursement of those units, like getting that down to a fine science is, I think, really what we're all thinking about, right, and moving towards. So what are some of the other business models that are driving this change, that we're seeing out there? Anybody have any thoughts on that, or types of customers, and the types of visibility that they're looking for? Some interesting use cases out there.
Yeah. Hey, sorry, go ahead, Rajesh. No, you go ahead.
Yeah. So again, I know. So when we say visibility, right? So there are a lot of different aspects to the visibility. It's just not like, where is my shipment, right? So if you see some of our customers, they want to know what's happening with their customs brokerage milestones, right? Have you cleared customs? Again, because it has subsequent impact to your holding cost in the port, right? And all those add up to the different types of requirements we are seeing from shippers, right? And beyond just the visibility to shipments, the KPIs and SLAs, that becomes a very valid criteria for customers, right? I know we spoke about container milestones. Going beyond container milestone, what's the lead time it's going to take to bring from Brazil to US, or from Argentina to US? How those lead times stack to each other? I think that's where the analytics and KPIs on top of this visibility, it becomes more and more important for our customers.
So again, that kind of engagement layer. Thomas, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree with Rajesh, and I think what we're seeing is I normally describe this in a three-step model. I think what we've been all experiencing in the last 3 to 5 years is something what I would call collect and connect. We integrated lots of data sources. We had the API paradigm arriving, going away from EDI. We have a growing maturity in carriers, in forwarder systems. We can have more data, and I think that's something that we experienced over the past years, I would say. The current phase, I would more say that's something what I would say it's analyze and predict. We have now data. We have good quality data. We are able to make predictions. I'm fully with Rajesh when he says the customer wants to apply now this model and saying, what is my lead time, or do some what if scenarios, or can I put it on a rail going from China to Europe, or do I put it on a vessel? These kind of very operational questions are now something that we are working on a lot. What I do see, and I think that's interesting, because we start seeing this in industries like automotive, with big OEMs who have a very efficient supplier or supply chain network, is that we integrate phase 1 and 2 into the next phase, what I would call automation. So everything that we're doing needs to generate some actionable data, some actionable information, as Brian mentioned earlier. So it's nice to have transparency. It's nice to have visibility. It's nice to have predictive visibility or advanced visibility. But now I need to do something with it. How is it going to impact my decisions on the point of sale? How is it going to impact, as Edson said, my production planning? How can I implement new concepts in safety stocks? I think this is really where we're going to, and we will need a very deep integration from visibility only going to visibility everywhere in the ERP, in the planning system, in the invoicing system. We have business cases where because we deliver in real time a POD, we kick off the invoicing 2 days earlier than before. So we have a different impact on finance. We were talking about supply chain visibility. Now I'm talking to the CFO, and Carl, I'll let you take the word afterwards. But I think that's where we're seeing we're going into an automated way, and this visibility will become visible in a certain way, not only in supply chain, but in all the other areas of a company.
Yeah, what I wanted to build on that, Thomas, because a direction or an angle I don't think we've been chatting about too much is the knock-on benefit of improved data visibility, improved granularity, really for shippers and BCOs when it comes to the trade finance space, where similar to kind of more traditional finance situations, when you only have a course level of understanding of what the risks and consistencies are, you kind of end up spreading the cost across all parties. But these leading BCOs, these leading shippers who are able to provide more data, more understanding, understand the consistencies, understand the risks, actually provide that data to their trade finance partners, are getting better terms on their trade finance. It's actually affecting the bottom line. And often we speak about visibility in terms of the operational impact. How is this going to impact my inventory when and where I need it? But a knock-on effect of that may actually have, a very meaningful amount of dollars associated with it is how does it change your trade finance situation? How does it change your terms when your banker sees that you are far less risky based upon the suppliers you've selected and your interactions and ability to communicate with them based upon the logistics partners you've selected and their consistency and ability to manage through exceptions, et cetera. It starts to really change a space, and you can see how leaders on the brand BCO supplier, if they're making these investments in technology, you can see that it might seem like incremental improvements right now over their competitors, but they're accelerating away, and their acceleration is only gaining as they apply more technology, invest more in data.
Brian, Edson, are your customers asking you for more sort of data to help them cross department lines and make smarter decisions between logistics and finance? Because one of the things that's always fascinated me about logistics and transportation is when the truck or the vessel goes this way, the money goes the other way. So we're only doing that part of it to make sure that folks get paid, and I'm curious how that's affecting the interoperability asks on your customer base. Brian, you want to start?
I would say not as much as they should be yet. I think that is a pretty sophisticated topic for many shippers who ultimately, I talked to a very, very large brand that you would see in your supermarkets, and the conversations that I'm having with that brand today are, I have 3 people who are spending all day just trying to figure out when the ship's going to dock at the port.
Interesting.
Right? Like literally and this is a brand I grew up with, has been around forever, and we would all think would be beyond that point, and they're not.
Kyle, don't you know a guy that can do that?
Yeah, I made the pitch, Kyle. But the ultimate, I think there is such a long way to go when you get out of automotive. And I do think automotive is an interesting case because they're so far ahead of everyone else because they have this small group of very controlling companies that can dictate things. And when you look at almost every other vertical, the people are just scrambling to where's my stuff? Right? When's it going to be there? And how can I get this entire team of people I hired to be smart to stop just wrangling carrier websites all day?
Yeah, no, I think that's a fantastic point, right? Like maybe the top of the market still has a lot of room for improvement that the middle market has probably started to solve for. Edson, how are you seeing? I mean, this is just my speculation, but I'm guessing that you're probably talking to some of the more forward-thinking, supply chain organizations, the organizations that are kind of out there ahead of the bell curve. So what are the early adopters asking you for as it relates to data to support, kind of the financial side of the house?
Yeah, I mean, I think like the level of collaboration that happens across supply chains is tenfold, or whatever, put any multiplier on it, right? Like it just has to happen, right? And so the sophistication of what Kyle was talking about doesn't trickle down across the supply chain, exactly what Brian just said. And I think my way of kind of answering your initial question was like, I don't know that we see like a broad range of shippers, but we certainly see different types of segments, right? And that segment, which is SMB and below, they are starting to get the wallet for this, right? And it might not be a must-have as it would be for someone a little bit more sophisticated, but it's starting to certainly feel that way, especially as they start to get scale. And so all the complexity as they get some of this scale, they have to be able to collaborate across, business units. And even just simple stuff, right? Like making sure that you're matching what was on the purchase order, what was on the invoice, what was on the shipping documents, and what you actually received. That's challenging, right? And teams spend hours trying to put that together. And if you can, make that a little bit more sophisticated for someone and allow them to do that in, a quick reference check, that's the sort of data that I think is moving the needle right now in a pretty interesting way for these lower end companies.
So I think what I'm hearing then is some of the sort of more innovative companies that are out ahead of the curve. The CFO is probably working closely with the supply chain team and has a better understanding of the cost structure, et cetera. And then still there's probably massive potential for the rest of the market to get caught up on that side. Sounds like that's what I'm hearing. So I think the last couple points that we want to talk about is, from chaos, there's supposed to come order, right? And so I think the expectation is with these disruptions we've seen, the influx of capital and all these other sort of triggering events and trends, is that we should see a real influx of innovation coming out of this post-pandemic new normal supply chain world. So I'm kind of curious about what innovation is emerging now. What are some of the trends that we'll be looking for collectively as a group, and then what are the capabilities that shippers are maybe not asking for today, but we expect that they probably should be or will be. So, Kyle, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I live in the ocean data on a day-to-day basis. So what I see, today is just requests for more consistency in data, more detail in the data, et cetera. I would expect those types of requests to start spreading out across any and all the data in the operational side of supply chain. So it's not just the tracking information. We really have to get to the point of better digitizing the booking and quoting process as well over on the ocean side. That is desperately in need of attention. But I think where we're going to be, say, the next 3 to 5 years or so, is, to many of the points made here, is we'll be able to make smarter decisions by really letting multiple data sets work together and just tell us what is the better situation, what is the better simulation, what is the better scenario. And it doesn't have to be complicated quite often, because the hurdle we're trying to clear right now is just getting everything off of paper and out of fax machines and getting it into tabular data structures and onto the cloud. Because once you do that, then you have options. So I think 3 to 5 years from now, we're going to see almost all of the people on this call are going to be leading organizations and teams that have really, really pushed everything up to the cloud and have these better networks of connections between the data sets. And it will just be easy to create software to solve day-to-day operational problems. We're just having to deal with that really painful part of going from bodies to bits right now.
I think that's a good way of putting it. Thomas, do you have any thoughts around innovation that you're expecting to be discussing with your customers in the coming years?
Yeah, I completely agree with Kyle, what he said on the ocean side, and I would push this probably a bit further on a real end-to-end view of a supply chain. And I think Edson said earlier, it starts with the customer order coming in, and then you follow it down the process, down to production with the multiple layers of suppliers, tier 1 to tier 3, 4, with different modes of transportation in between. And I'm completely with you, Carl. I think there is the challenge making this a transparent data set that is usable then for, as I mentioned earlier, predictive ETAs for anything else. But that's really the challenge, not only on ocean, even if ocean is a big part and has a lot of attention right now with the Suez Canal being blocked. But I still believe that the shippers are really looking for this end-to-end. And as I mentioned earlier, I believe and I strongly think that the shippers are looking for this automation. Visibility for the sake of visibility doesn't exist. It's integrated into any kind of decision-making process from the customer order to the delivery last mile into the customer hands. And I think that's where the real innovation is coming from. This goes through connectivity, it goes through ETA, it goes to predictivity. I think it goes, as we said in the very beginning of this webinar, to new business concepts. And I think this is where the real innovation will be lying in the next 3 to 5 years.
Well, I think that bodes well for you, Brian, in your business. When I first met you, I believe at an air cargo event a few years ago, and you had just launched the idea, and we were in the midst of at Airspace at the time of integrating this, modern API into a couple of monolithic applications. So your messaging just really resonated with me from day one in terms of, bringing a structured way to the market to connect the old with the new. And so do you have any thoughts in terms of what's the next big thing? I think maybe a few years ago, folks on this team would have been talking about blockchain or something else. What do you think?
I think the 3 to 5 year win picture is this morning I was unpackaging something in my kitchen and I was thinking about the product waste and where the product came from and traceability and all of those things because I don't know, I'm a big nerd, but the circular supply chain is all about visibility, and ultimately all of this carbon footprint, sourcing, forced labor, waste, returns, all of it is, can I, as the consumer, right? We talk about the shipper's wallet mattering. The consumer's wallet is really the only one that matters, right? And consumers, our kids, and hopefully us, are going to be holding brands accountable for every bit of the seed to seed to seed, ultimately in the circular supply chain. And that if you really want to look at the big picture, we're building the foundations of that.
Man, I love that. I'm glad that you brought that up because, ultimately, at the end of the day, that's one of these topics that gets lost in the shuffle of all these other things that we want to do. But, to begin with the end in mind and know that we need to leave this place better than we found it. I think, that's an inspirational way to look at it. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Rajesh or Edson, any sort of future trends or predictions you'd like to share with the group before we wrap this up?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I just want to reiterate on the quality of data, right? As more and more data is coming, we need to have consistent and good quality data so that we can give the real visibility to customers, right? And with so much data, there is also a need for giving contextual information to customers. Customers operate globally, right? And they have different parts of it. So, we cannot just dump all the data. That's where there's a need to give more contextual information to the users who are using those platforms, actually, right? That's what we are seeing. And I think this is going to be a very exciting space. If you looked at the recent Gartner report, we saw this market is going to grow from $300 million last year to $1 billion, in 2024, right? Which is going to be a 3x growth. So we are going to see a lot more changes as this is going to be evolving, right? Just wrap up. What I'm saying is the new trends I'm saying is we are customers asking for capacity availability also to be on this platform, which is new. which is just beyond where is my container. Can you show what are the available schedules, what both in terms of air and ocean? I think that's where we are going to slowly expand visibility.
Yeah, Charlie, the only thing I'd add is maybe build on Rajesh's a little bit here and really agree with him on the importance of data. And I think that, if you look at what's coming and you believe that there's going to be self-driving vehicles at some point and all kinds of stuff that does seem to be on the horizon, it's changing the way data even gets processed, right? Like a self-driving vehicle doesn't have time to send that data back to the cloud. It has to do the processing right there in its vehicle, right? And so it's changing the landscape of how we deal with data. And I think, as cliche as this is, I do think machine learning is going to be really important in this space to help get customers to that decision point earlier and earlier, right? And the better these machine learning models are, the further out you can push that decision to stay ahead of the problem areas that we do see in supply chain. So that's an area that I'm pretty excited about for sure.
Yeah, I think that supports Thomas's earlier theme of the collect, connect, and automate, right? And I think the connect and automate part of it is where Brian and Kyle are spending a lot of their time. And it sounds like what Rajesh is building over and building the backbone of the platform with Geodis, and now understanding. I think it was a fascinating topic that you just brought up on the tail end of our discussion, Rajesh, is the discovery of capacity, which is sort of this new problem that used to pop up every once in a while, and now it's here, and you can't book a truck, you can't get your freight on an ocean vessel right now. And I think that's another trend that we could probably add to this list, is put that all in one place. So right now, I guess what I'm hearing is there's a lot we need to automate. We need to get finance connected up with supply chain. All of the green screens need to speak with APIs. We need a single source of truth to exist, and customers are adding to the list. So sounds like a pretty standard project to me in supply chain. The scope is going to continue to grow, right, with the industry and our customers' needs. But what an awesome conversation to have today with a bunch of freight geeks like me. So I'm grateful for your guys' time today, and thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, likewise, Charlie.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
And thank you all for attending. We'll be in touch shortly. So
sounds good. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.